Greetings and welcome, star seeds, light workers, walk ins, energy healers, counselors, caregivers, all those seekers of the higher truth and the way of enlightenment, the way of ascension. Today, I wanted to chat with you about another topic that has come into my awareness from another Facebook group that I was in. And also, I got an email about this as well recently. So I thought it would be appropriate to kind of talk into this subject a little bit for those of you who may be curious. Psychic gifts. Psychic gifts, and do you need to be born with them? So when I was growing up in the 1970s and early 80s, we had this idea that you had to be born with your psychic gifts. You had to be sort of the seventh son of a seventh son, or you had to have this ancestral lineage of psychics or witches or whatever in your ancestral history. That is all false information. Let's just put it out there in one big whopping thing. It is all false information to say that one cannot go from having no psychic gifts to having their psychic gifts fully turned on and developed and working for them. That is the absolute truth, that you can do that you are not limited, and that you're not bound into the three-dimensional consciousness without being able to move beyond that. If you weren't born with it, that's just silliness. So, so let's talk about that for a minute. I myself was not born with psychic gifts. I still do not consider myself a psychic, even though I am able to gain information by traveling with my consciousness into different topics, different subjects, and exploring different questions that I might have, right? Or that might be posed to me by others. So I have developed my psychic gifts. I have developed my spiritual gifts from pretty much nothing. I would say that I always had an interest in spirituality. I grew up Catholic, and when I was very young, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, something along those lines, I remember saying to my mother in church one day that I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, and that was a priest. To which she said, "Sorry, darling, you can't be a priest. Only men can be priests." Which clicked off this sort of a radar in my head at a very young age, maybe 5, 6 years old. I looked around that Catholic church and decided that something was wrong in here. Something was wrong in here if women were not allowed to be priests, were not allowed to speak the gospel, were not allowed to teach the spiritual truths. And so from that very young age, I became disillusioned with the church, though we continued up until it was my confirmation. And for those of you who don't know, in Catholicism, your confirmation is when you vow that you will be Catholic for the rest of your life. You take a solemn vow in the church that you will be Catholic for the rest of your life. And so by this time in my life, I had a lot more education about different religions and different spiritualities around the world, thank goodness. And I had my first spiritual crisis because I couldn't take that vow. I knew that I could not take that vow at that time, to vow for the rest of my life that I would be Catholic. I needed more information, and I wasn't sure that that was the way it was going to be. And my vow, my word and my vow were so important to me that I broke tradition. I broke the tradition of our family being Catholic and being confirmed Catholic. And interestingly enough, my younger brothers and sisters never had to go through that, never had to go through confirmation. Um, and shortly after, within 5 years or so, I think that both of my mother and father stopped going to the Catholic Church as well, and found a different church for themselves. So that was just an interesting little side note. Probably entirely irrelevant, but let's go back to psychic gifts. So when I was a teenager, my aunts, or my cousins, actually, my older cousins, were playing with tarot cards, and I was so interested in tarot cards and wanted to learn more, wanted to know more about it. And I did not, I wasn't able to start playing with them until much later, later teens. And in my early 20s, I experimented with Wicca. And boy, that was another spiritual crisis, because I started to become educated about the old religion of the goddess, the female god expression. And when I was a kid, I used to climb up on my roof. I had a skylight from my bedroom, and I used to climb up on my roof, and I would go and sit on the roof, and I would talk to the moon. I felt like the moon was like a telephone to God. And when I found Wicca, and it was all about female spirituality, all about revolving around the cycles of the moon and the natural cycles of the earth, and the ancient goddesses that were once revered, and what became of this ancient matriarchal cultures. um, I felt inside me that it was part of my soul's lineage to be Wiccan. Not to be Wiccan, but to actually honor the goddess, to love the goddess, to worship the goddess, to worship the moon, and the female aspects of divinity. And I could feel it very, very deeply in my soul that this was a path that I had traveled before, and it was very familiar to me. And I went through another spiritual crisis at this time, because it was so interesting, so familiar. It was calling me. And yet I had this old Catholic upbringing that said that I was going to go to hell, that I was going to go to hell for lighting a candle and saying a prayer to a goddess, right? That I was going to burn eternally in hell, and my soul would be eternally punished for um, worshiping the natural cycles of the earth, the equinoxes, the solstices, and the energies of those cycles. So I had to go through a lot of inner investigation and inner transmutation and inner dialogue, just to be able to feel safe to practice and explore a different religion, that felt very empowering to me as a woman. So that was part of my journey, and to be and that's kind of where it began for me, because when we got together as a group of women, and we did a whole summer of moon circles, saying the prayers, saying the rituals, setting our intentions, and the magic happened. The magic happened on the very first day that we did our first moon circle, this gathering of women. A tornado touched down in New Paltz shortly after we closed the ceremony, which was, just a couple miles from where the house was that we were doing it. So that was one of the confirmation, and it was like the middle of the summer. There was no storms going on, so it was just this weird random tornado that touched down in New Paltz shortly after we closed our ceremony. Um, other things that happened, other manifestations that happened through the spells and through the incantations and through the rituals and through the ceremonies. And people were manifesting their heart's desires at that time. And it was incredibly empowering to feel the energy of the earth, to feel the energy of the moon, to be bonded in a circle of women, praising each other, supporting each other, allowing each other to have the space to share their intentions, and feeling the magic, and then sharing the experience of what had happened for each one of us since the last circle that we joined. So that was incredibly empowering. And that is when I started to really get a sense of a real tactical sense of these entities, these benevolent entities, these goddesses that we were invoking in our circle. For me, my psychic gifts, my psychic development was not visual. It was not visual. I did not see things. I felt them in my being. I felt them in my being. And so I didn't see a goddess standing next to me. I felt the presence of, as if somebody, as if there was a real person standing next to you. You feel that presence. That's how my psychic gifts began, was to actually just feel the presence of these benevolent female deities that came and responded to the call that we put out. So I had a great journey with Wicca. And since then, I'm going to just wrap this up in a nutshell. Since then, my psychic gifts have continued to develop. I have continued to invest in my psychic development and my spiritual development for decades now, because I've been forever fascinated with it. I have been forever intrigued with it. I am one of those people that is continually exploring what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. What else can I add to my toolbox? How does this fit with that? And as I continue to practice, and what I find to be one of the most important ways of developing your psychic gifts, your spiritual, I prefer to call them spiritual gifts, because they're broader. They're broader than just visioning what's your next vision of the next 7 to 10 days. What's the vision of the future, which is more like a psychic gift. But the spiritual gifts that allow you to bridge your consciousness with those that have already passed through the veil. Your spiritual gifts that allow you to bridge your consciousness with your own higher self and receive the illumination of your higher self. Illumination, which leads to different choices, different behaviors, experimenting with something else, and a whole new staircase of possibilities of future realities open up, because you've received the divine insight and you're no longer going to be acting on autopilot or responding in the same way that you've always responded, because now you see things differently. Yeah. So part of developing the spiritual gifts is actually getting into touch with that spiritual body, that light body that is you, your soul body, that expands and extends beyond your physical body, that has the higher perspective, can not only see through your eyes, but can see from above you, can see all of the players on the game board and how they move and how they operate and what they're doing and what they're not doing. Yeah. So your spiritual gifts, your psychic gifts are not held back from you. They're not held back from you. They're not exclusive to those people that have only been born as a psychic or have only been born with the ancestral lineage of the psychic. Your spiritual gifts, your psychic gifts are your birthright, And we have reports from thousands of parents who share about how their children, before the age of 5 years old, can recollect past lives, can see into the future, receive messages from their grandparents, receive messages about their other family members. And then somewhere around the age of 5, 6, a lot of those psychic gifts start to get closed off because other things become more important. Where we place our awareness, where we place our focus is where we receive the data, where we receive the information. And so if we become solely focused through the physical senses in regards to our physical world, that's the only data that we're going to be picking up. So your psychic gifts, your spiritual development, your spiritual gifts, all of these gifts are yours to have. But the door must be opened by you. You are the one that must step beyond the limitation of the physical senses and begin to explore what's next. What else can I do? What else is available to me? What is out there? What is the nature of reality that is so much bigger than anything that I have ever been led to believe? So I encourage you to take that step. I encourage you to seek. I encourage you to find. When you seek, you will find. Especially if you do a little prayer in intention beforehand and say, this is what I want for myself. Show me the way. And those gifts will begin to develop. You will be led to a book. You will be led to a speaker. You will be led to a teacher. Whatever is your intention, you will be led there. I have had several experiences like this, but since we're on 17 minutes, I'll share those in another video. Take care, everybody. Peace out, Star Nation. You have an awesome day. And by the way, if I didn't share this with you already, we are working with the Awakening Your Light Body intro series. And sorry, I'm totally flaking out. That was a total flake out. Awakening Your Light Body intro series. It's been going on for a couple weeks now. It's going to go on for 2 more weeks. So we hope to see you on some of those. We will put the link to register in the comments or the descriptions. Some of the subjects that we're going to be covering is seeding your mind with soul qualities, transmitting soul light to any area of your life, receiving messages from your intuition, receiving answers from your intuition, and so bridging your higher self to transform relationships, sending and receiving telepathic communications. These are things we're going to play with over the next couple of weeks for free. So if you are interested in bridging your spiritual gifts, your divine gifts, hop on with us and give it a try. See if it's for you. See if you like it. And we look forward to seeing you there. Check it out in the comments. The link, I mean. Okay.